Be me, 24, 315 pounds, 6 feet tall, live alone in some crappy rental apartment, work night shifts at a warehouse, never had a girlfriend, never even kissed anyone, basically invisible to women my entire life. Spend most of my free time online because real life sucks. Warehouse job is perfect for someone like me. Quiet, repetitive, barely have to talk to anyone. Just move boxes around and try not to think too much. My coworker Mason sometimes tries to make conversation. He's got this girlfriend and always talks about how women think. Makes me realize how far behind I am compared to normal guys, like he's speaking a foreign language when he talks about dating. Days blend together. Sleep, work, internet, repeat. Apartment feels like a cave sometimes. Order takeout because cooking for one person feels pointless. Browse forums late into the morning after work. That's where I actually feel like myself. Can write long, thoughtful posts. People respond positively. Online me is articulate and funny. Real life me just sweats and stammers. One day found this forum thread about loneliness. Girl named Clara posted something that hit different. Wasn't the usual attention-seeking stuff. She talked about feeling invisible, like guys look right through her. Mentioned having this friend Ivy who gets all the attention. Something about her writing made me want to respond. Started messaging back and forth. Turned out she was 21, worked as a freelance writer. Did remote copywriting while studying part-time. Also never been in a relationship, never even been kissed. Felt like finding someone who spoke my language. Our conversations got deeper over weeks. She'd tell me about her anxiety, how she felt stuck. I'd share stories about work, about feeling like an outsider. We both understood what it meant to be lonely in a room full of people. For the first time in years, someone actually listened to what I had to say. Months went by like this. Long messages about everything and nothing. Our fears, weird dreams, random thoughts at 3 a.m. She'd complain about Ivy bringing guys around, making her feel worse about herself. I'd tell her about Mason and his girlfriend stories that reminded me what I was missing. We became each other's escape from feeling so damn alone. Around the 6-month mark, she mentioned something that made my heart race. Turned out we lived in the same city. Had been talking to someone who was maybe 20 minutes away this whole time. The possibility of meeting in person suddenly became real. Terrifying, but real. We talked about it for weeks before deciding to meet. I was so nervous I couldn't eat for days. Kept imagining all the ways it could go wrong. What if I was even more pathetic in person? What if she took one look at me and ran? But the thought of finally meeting someone who got me was too tempting. Picked a park downtown on some random Saturday afternoon. Spent an hour getting ready, which for me meant finding the least wrinkled shirt. Drove across the city with sweaty palms. Kept rehearsing conversation topics in my head. Talk about her writing. Ask about her week. Don't be weird. Saw her sitting on a bench near the fountain. Looked exactly like her photos, which was a relief. Medium build, a little overweight, but not in a bad way. Seemed well put together, like she actually tried with her appearance. Walked over and said her name. She looked up and smiled. But something was off immediately. All those months of easy conversation just evaporated. We started walking around the park, and everything felt forced. I'd try to bring up stuff we'd talked about online. She'd give short answers and look around like she wanted to be anywhere else. The silence between us became this heavy thing. I kept thinking, this is the person I shared everything with. Felt like we were both wearing masks of ourselves. The real connection we had seemed to exist only through screens. Walking next to her, I felt more alone than when I was actually alone. We sat on another bench after maybe an hour of awkward small talk. I tried to salvage it, asked about her writing projects. She mentioned Ryan, this guy from her IT class who'd been texting her. The way she said his name, I could tell she was interested. Felt like getting punched in the stomach. Made some excuse about having to get home for work. We hugged goodbye, one of those stiff formal hugs. Promised to message each other soon, both of us knowing we probably wouldn't. Drove home feeling like I'd lost something I never really had. She messaged me a few times over the next week. Casual stuff at first, then more concerned. Hey, how was work? Then, did I do something wrong? Finally, I miss talking to you. What happened? Each message made me feel worse about myself. Couldn't bring myself to respond. What was I supposed to say? Sorry, you're not the person I thought you were? Meeting you made me realize how delusional I am. Easier to just disappear. Let it fade away. Coward's way out, but the only way I knew. She stopped messaging after about 10 days. Felt relieved and devastated at the same time. Went back to my routine, work, sleep, internet. Repeat. But now there was this new emptiness where our conversations used to be. Kept starting messages to her and deleting them. Mason noticed I seemed more depressed than usual. Tried to give me advice about women. Said something about how online relationships aren't real anyway. Wanted to punch him, but he wasn't wrong. Just made me realize how little I understood about connecting with people. Months turned into years. Kept working the same job, living the same life. But something started changing slowly. Maybe it was the guilt about Clara. Maybe just getting tired of being miserable. Started going to the warehouse gym during my breaks. Losing weight was harder than I expected. But having a goal felt better than having nothing. Dropped 20 pounds, then 30, then 50. Started noticing I could climb stairs without getting winded. Mason actually complimented me one day, said I looked different. Around the time I hit 70 pounds lost, everything shifted. New people started working at the warehouse. They'd invite me out for drinks after work sometimes. First time in years, I felt like part of a group. Turns out when you're not completely disgusted with yourself, other people notice. Learned how to have conversations that didn't make me want to hide. Practiced talking to cashiers, servers, random people. Still awkward, but not the stammering mess I used to be. Even had a few brief things with women. Nothing serious, just short connections that ended naturally. But underneath all the progress, something still felt hollow. Like I was playing a role instead of being myself. The person who could write those long, thoughtful messages to Clara. Where did he go when I tried to be normal? Success felt as isolating as failure had, just in a different way. Then, one random Tuesday, got an email notification. Message from Clara after almost 3 years of silence. Hands actually shook when I opened it. She said her life had changed too, wanted to catch up. Mentioned she had a boyfriend now, guy named Ryan. Read her message probably 20 times. She described Ryan as stable, reliable, good on paper. They'd been together for over a year, but between the lines, could sense the same loneliness I remembered. She mentioned feeling distant from him, like something was missing. The kicker was near the end. She was still a virgin, said Ryan seemed uncomfortable with physical intimacy. Kept her at arm's length emotionally too. Here she was, finally in a relationship, but still felt like the same isolated person. Made me think about my own changes, how I looked different, but felt the same inside. Took me a week to respond. Told her about the weight loss, new social life, brief relationships, but admitted that none of it filled the void I thought it would. We were both supposedly living normal lives now, yet here we were, reaching out to each other again. She suggested meeting up. Different person now, she said. Maybe it would be different. Part of me wanted to say no, protect myself from another disappointment. But curiosity won out. What would it be like to see her as the person I'd become? Met at a coffee shop this time. neutral territory. She looked good, more confident than before. Still had that same thoughtful way of speaking I remembered from our messages. Conversation flowed easier. We both knew what to expect now. No illusions about magical instant connections. We talked about our changes, the ways we'd grown. She mentioned her writing career taking off, getting better clients. I told her about the gym, about learning to be social, but also about how success felt weird when you'd been an outsider for so long. She nodded like she understood exactly what I meant. Ryan came up naturally in conversation. She described their relationship like someone talking about a job they didn't hate but didn't love. Comfortable, stable, but missing some essential element. Sounded like she was trying to convince herself it was enough. Reminded me of my own attempts to be satisfied with surface-level connections. After coffee, we walked around the downtown area. Felt easier than our first meeting, but carried weight from our history. Kept catching her looking at me like she was trying to reconcile this version with the person she remembered. Probably doing the same thing myself. Found ourselves sitting by the river as the sun started setting. Conversation got quiet, more serious. She turned to me and said something I wasn't prepared for. I spent a lot of time wondering what would have happened if you hadn't disappeared. Her voice was soft, but there was an edge to it. Didn't know how to respond to that. What do you say to someone when you know you hurt them? When you know you were a coward, but also know you weren't ready then? Settled for, I think about that too sometimes. Weak answer, but honest. She talked about those weeks after our first meeting, how she'd replayed every moment, wondering what she'd done wrong. Eventually realized it wasn't about her, but it still hurt. Made me face how selfish ghosting had been. Easier for me, devastating for her. We sat in silence for a while after that, watching people walk by, couples holding hands, families with kids. Felt like we were both thinking about paths not taken. Roads that led here, but could have led somewhere completely different. The weight of missed opportunities hanging between us. She mentioned Ivy getting engaged recently. Said it with this mix of happiness and sadness. Happy for her friend, but reminded of her own situation. Ryan had never even hinted at anything long-term. Seemed content to keep things exactly as they were indefinitely. Told her about my own relationship attempts. How they'd felt like trying on clothes that didn't quite fit. Could play the part of a normal guy, but never felt authentic. Always waiting for the other person to realize I was pretending. She said she felt the same way with Ryan, like she was performing normalcy. The conversation was getting heavy, but also felt necessary. We were finally saying things we should have said years ago, acknowledging the connection we'd had and lost. Admitting that neither of us had found it again with anyone else. Scary, but also relieving to be honest about it. As it got darker, we started walking back toward our cars. Could feel the evening ending, decision time approaching. Were we going to try to rebuild something or let this be closure? The question hung in the air without either of us voicing it, both too scared of being rejected again. She stopped walking when we reached her car, turned to face me directly for the first time all evening. Looked like she was gathering courage to say something important. I know too much time has passed, and we're different people now. Paused like she was reconsidering her words. Continued with, but talking to you tonight, I remembered what it felt like to be understood. Said she'd forgotten that feeling existed. Ryan was a good person, but they never had conversations like this. Never felt like he really saw her, just the version of her that fit his expectations. Wanted to tell her I felt the same way, that our conversations had been the most real connection I'd ever experienced, that all my progress and changes hadn't filled the specific void she used to fill, but was terrified of being vulnerable again. What if we tried and failed even worse this time? Instead, just said, "Tonight was good. I'm glad we did this." Safe, non-committal, protecting myself. Saw something shift in her expression, like she'd hoped for more. But she just nodded and said, "Me too." Hugged goodbye, longer than our awkward first meeting, but still careful. Drove home with my head spinning, kept thinking about her comment about being understood. Realized that's what I'd been missing in all my other connections. People liked the improved version of me, but nobody really knew me. Clara had known the real me, the one I'd been afraid to show anyone since. Got home and found a message from her waiting. Sent while I was driving, must have typed it right after I left. "Thank you for talking to me tonight. Even if nothing comes of this, you were the first person who made me feel less alone." I hadn't realized how much I missed that. Read it probably 50 times. Every word felt loaded with meaning and possibility. She was leaving the door open, but not pushing. Giving me the choice without making me feel pressured. Exactly the kind of thoughtful communication I remembered from our early messages. Spent the next hour typing and deleting responses. Wanted to say I felt the same way. Wanted to suggest we try again, slowly, carefully. Wanted to apologize for ghosting her and explain why it happened. But kept second-guessing every word. My life had improved in measurable ways since our first meeting. Better job, better health, basic social skills. But sitting in my apartment at midnight still felt like the same isolated person. Just better at hiding it now. Maybe that was the real problem. I'd learned to mask instead of heal. Thought about Ryan and their relationship. Sounded like they were both settling for comfortable instead of real. Made me wonder if that's what most people do. Find someone good enough and convince themselves it's love. But Clara and I had touched something deeper, even if only through screens. Realized I was at a crossroads. Could play it safe. Keep her in the past where she belonged. Continue building my new life with people who knew the surface version of me. Or risk everything on the chance that we could find our connection again. Knowing we might destroy even the memory of what we'd had. The fear was real and justified. We'd already proven that our online chemistry didn't automatically translate. 3 years had passed. We'd both changed, developed new patterns. What if we were both just nostalgic for something that never existed? What if meeting again just confirmed we were incompatible? But the alternative felt like a different kind of failure. Spending the rest of my life wondering what if. Settling for relationships that felt like putting on costumes. Never finding someone who understood the person behind the improvements. Never feeling truly known again. Looked at her message one more time. Could read the loneliness between the lines, same as my own. She was reaching out despite the risk, being braver than I was. Deserved better than being abandoned twice by the same person. Deserved someone willing to try, even when the outcome was uncertain. Started typing a response, then stopped. What if I was about to make the same mistake again? What if my fear of rejection made me sabotage something real? But what if trying and failing was worse than not trying at all? Paralyzed by the weight of the decision. Deleted the message app and tried to go to sleep. Tossed and turned for hours, mind racing. Kept thinking about her sitting in her apartment, probably wondering if I'd respond. Kept thinking about Ryan, stable and safe, but leaving her feeling empty. Kept thinking about myself, improved but still fundamentally alone. Woke up the next evening before work with her message still unanswered. Realized I was being a coward again. But maybe being aware of it this time would make a difference. Maybe acknowledging the pattern was the first step to breaking it. Or maybe I was just making excuses for inevitable self-sabotage. Sat at my computer for 20 minutes, cursor blinking in the empty message box. Every possible response seemed either too much or too little. Too eager or too cold, too honest or too guarded. Finally, just closed the laptop and went to work. Told myself I'd figure it out later. But later never came. Days turned into weeks of not responding, each day making it harder to break the silence, each day confirming I was still the same person who'd ghosted her before, just with better abs and social skills. Mason asked why I seemed distracted at work. Couldn't explain that I was reliving the same mistake from 3 years ago. Couldn't admit I was too scared to take a chance on real connection. Just said I was tired, focused on moving boxes. Let the routine numb the anxiety. Sometimes caught myself wondering what she was doing, if she'd given up on me again, if she was trying harder with Ryan, or finally letting herself be happy with good enough, if she thought about me at all, or had moved on completely. Questions I couldn't answer because I was too paralyzed to find out. 3 months later, still hadn't responded. Her message sat in my inbox like evidence of my cowardice. Reminder that I was still the same person who chose isolation over risk. Improvements meant nothing if I couldn't break the patterns that kept me alone. Success was just a prettier version of the same prison. Decided to write this post instead of responding to her. Maybe telling the story would help me understand what went wrong. Maybe other people had been in similar situations. Maybe admitting my failures publicly would force me to face them. Or maybe I'm just procrastinating on actually doing something about it. Here I am, better version of my old self, but making the same mistakes. She's probably still with Ryan, still feeling unseen and misunderstood. We're both living these half-lives, pretending we're content, when we had something real and threw it away because it was scary. Because being vulnerable felt more dangerous than being alone. Keep thinking about her last message. About being the first person who made her feel less alone. About how much she'd missed that feeling. Wondering if she found it again, or if she's still looking. Wondering if I'll ever be brave enough to find out. Anons, what would you do? Try again and risk destroying even the good memory? Or accept that some connections can't survive real life? Sometimes I think the person I was online was more real than who I am now. But maybe that's just another excuse for staying safe. Either way, I need to do something. Can't keep living in this limbo where I've improved everything except what matters most. Can't keep being the guy who ghosts people when things get real. But don't know if 3 months of silence can be forgiven. Don't know if I deserve another chance after wasting the last one. Maybe posting this is the first step. Acknowledging that I'm still running from the same fears. That success doesn't mean anything if you're still alone with it. That I might have let the best connection of my life slip away twice. Because I was too scared to see what we could become. Guess we'll see if I'm brave enough to hit send on a different kind of message. Or if I'll keep writing stories about my failures instead of trying to fix them. Clock's ticking, and I'm running out of excuses. Time to decide if I want to keep being the protagonist of my own tragedy, or finally try to write a different ending.